What if I told you that um, buried within one of the most ordinary everyday things we do, there's this potential superpower?
Hmm.
Forget, expensive programs or
Yeah.
really complicated techniques. The key to boosting your happiness, strengthening your health, and deepening your connections might be incredibly simple.
Okay, I'm listening.
What if the act of sharing a meal with others is less about just, eating, and maybe more about a fundamental shortcut to a better life?
It does sound a bit counterintuitive, doesn't it? Especially now when everything's so fast-paced and, convenience often seems to win out over connection.
Right.
But the sources we've been digging into, and there's quite a range, from proper research studies to anthropological stuff, even online discussions, they all seem to be pointing towards this really powerful truth.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are taking a really close look at a whole stack of material, all focused on something totally universal: eating together. Our mission really is to go beyond the obvious, to sort of extract the essential insights. We want to understand why. Why does breaking bread with other people hold such profound significance?
Yeah, looking at the science behind it, the psychology, those deep cultural roots.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the very real sort of tangible benefits it offers for our well-being, our relationships.
So get ready to discover why that simple invitation, come share a meal, might just be one of the most meaningful things you can ask or answer. Let's dive into what these sources are telling us.
Okay, so when we think about eating together, maybe on a grand scale, history and archaeology,
Yeah.
they often paint this picture of the feast, right?
Oh, absolutely. And our sources definitely acknowledge this long history. Communal eating, or feasting, as they call it, it's fascinated archaeologists and anthropologists for decades.
Right.
And the early focus in the research, especially when looking at settled agricultural societies, was often on these really big, sometimes competitive feasts.
Competitive, how so?
Well, think back to the Neolithic period. Agriculture meant surpluses people could grow and store more food than they immediately needed.
Okay.
And that surplus, it became a kind of social tool. Hosting a massive feast wasn't just about being generous, it was a display.
Showing off status?
Exactly. Showing off status, wealth, your ability to marshal resources. And it also created social debts,
Yeah.
Obligations. People ate your food, came to your event, so now they kind of owe you one, in a sense.
Right, I see. So it's about power dynamics, too.
Precisely. And these big feasts were also central for celebrating important rituals, harvests, weddings, rites of passage, that kind of thing. They were infrequent, usually pretty large scale, and often designed to reinforce social hierarchies and community bonds. But yeah, sometimes through that lens of competition or obligation.
There wasn't just farmers doing this, was it? The sources mentioned foragers, too.
That's right, yeah. Foragers also feasted, though probably on a different scale, and often it was driven more by, necessity. Imagine a group of hunter-gatherers getting lucky with a really big hunt. They bring down a large animal. Suddenly, you've got this huge amount of food, this big packet.
And no freezer.
Exactly. Limited shelf life, especially before widespread preservation techniques. So the most efficient thing to do, really the only sensible thing, was to consume it quickly and communally. Share it out so it doesn't go to waste.
Makes sense. So these big, spectacular feasts, whether they were Neolithic status displays or foragers sharing a big kill, they're interesting, and they've got loads of research attention.
But they're just one part of the picture.
Right.
As one of the sources, the Dunbar study, puts it, they're really just the tip of an iceberg. The vast, vast majority of communal eating, the kind that happens day in, day out, across basically all cultures, it's much smaller, more intimate.
Focus on family and friends.
Primarily, yes. Family meals are almost universal, aren't they? And inviting guests, friends, neighbors, colleagues to eat in your home, that's like a fundamental act of hospitality everywhere. It's seen as one of the best ways to actually get to know someone properly on a deeper level.
And that leads to this kind of modern paradox, doesn't it?
How do you mean?
Well, we live in this era defined by speed, convenience, fast food, ready meals, eating on the go, eating alone while staring at a screen. Sitting down with other people often takes more time, more effort.
Definitely.
But despite all that pressure, this feeling persists, doesn't it? That eating together with family, with friends, it's important. It's desirable. We sort of know it matters, even if we struggle to do it.
We do. There's a strong intuition there.
Which brings us right to the core question the research is trying to tackle. Why? If it's often less efficient time-wise, what are the big, maybe even essential benefits that make us keep doing it or wanting to do it?
Yeah, and the Dunbar study gives us a useful framework here. It suggests looking at potential benefits on 3 different levels.
Okay, what are they?
First, there's the communal level. That's linked to those big feasts we talked about, building wider community links, connections between groups, often infrequent, large scale.
Got it. Level 1.
Second, the networking level. This is the everyday stuff. The frequent, smaller scale meals, family dinners, grabbing lunch with a friend. It's about making new connections. But maybe even more importantly, reinforcing and maintaining the ones you already have. The study calls it servicing relationships.
Servicing relationships. I like that. Okay. Level 2.
And third, the personal level. This is about the direct benefits to your own individual health and well-being that come from having strong social relationships in the first place.
Right. So the first 2 levels, communal and networking, they're more about like indirect benefits, building alliances, support structures.
Kind of like indirect fitness benefits, yeah. Helping individuals thrive through social support.
And the third level, personal, that's direct fitness, like measurable impacts on health.
Exactly. Physical health, mental health, longevity, that sort of thing.
And the research we're focusing on today, that UK survey, it really zooms in on those second and third levels, doesn't it?
It does. It's looking hard at the impact of that frequent, everyday social eating, the networking, and personal benefits.
And the science connected, just having social connections to actual health outcomes. That's getting pretty solid now, isn't it? It's not just a nice idea anymore.
Not at all. It's become much more widely accepted, even just recently. There's considerable evidence cited across these sources showing really significant health benefits linked to the size and, importantly, the quality of your social network.
Benefits like what, specifically?
Well, studies mentioned in the Dunbar paper and others link strong social ties to things like living longer, being more resistant to catching illnesses, recovering faster if you do get sick.
Wow.
And crucially, significantly higher levels of overall well-being and happiness.
That's huge. And the flip side is quite stark too, isn't it? One source mentioned loneliness being as bad as smoking.
Yeah, the Food and Wine source highlighted that finding from a meta-analysis. The negative health impact of loneliness and isolation can be comparable to smoking. They said like 15 cigarettes a day.
15 cigarettes a day. That's genuinely alarming. It really hammers home how vital connection is, not just for feeling good, but for like actual physical survival.
It really does. So given all that, this UK study wanted to see if everyday social eating could be a key mechanism for building and keeping those health-boosting social networks strong.
How do they go about it?
They used data from a big national survey, about 2,000 adults in the UK, a properly structured sample.
And what were the main questions they were trying to answer?
Basically 2 things. First, are people who eat socially more often also happier, more satisfied with life, more engaged in their communities, and do they actually have bigger support networks?
Okay, does frequency correlate with well-being?
Exactly. And second, digging a bit deeper, if you share an evening meal with someone who doesn't live with you, does it actually make you feel closer to them afterwards? And does what happens during that meal, the conversation, the activities, does that make a difference?
Right. So let's unpack the first part first. What did they find about how often people actually do eat socially?
Well, the headline number is that most people, 93%, said they eat socially, at least sometimes. So it's common.
Okay, that sounds pretty good.
But when you look closer, the data reveals something a bit more concerning, something that maybe reflects, modern life, how fragmented things can get.
How so?
While people might eat socially sometimes, many aren't regularly eating with specific important people in their lives. For instance, 15% hadn't had a meal with another family member, someone outside their immediate household, in the last 6 months.
6 months, wow. 15% haven't shared a meal with, like, a cousin or an aunt or uncle in half a year. That does show how easily those ties can loosen.
It really does. And it gets more pronounced the further out you go from that core family unit. 30% hadn't eaten with a best friend in 6 months.
30%.
And even more striking, maybe, 45% hadn't shared a meal with an old friend in that same period.
Nearly half the people surveyed hadn't caught up over a meal with an old friend in 6 months. Yeah, that feels like losing touch on quite a fundamental level.
Doesn't it? And the numbers climb higher for connections, like neighbors, almost 70% hadn't eaten with one recently, or work connections, about 15% hadn't eaten with a colleague, 32% not with their boss. It just shows how easily those less sort of automatic connections can just wither away if you don't make a conscious effort.
But people still feel they should be making that effort.
Oh, absolutely. The intuition is clearly still there. 65% of the people in the survey felt there was someone they should make more effort to see.
Okay.
And overwhelmingly, 75% of them thought the best way to reconnect with that person was specifically by sharing a meal together.
So the desire is there, the intuition is there, even if the reality is falling short sometimes.
Precisely.
Okay, so how did this frequency or lack of frequency of social eating actually link up with their overall well-being? You said the findings were striking.
They really were very consistent. People who ate socially at least sometimes reported significantly higher scores on 5 key measures of social well-being compared to the small group who said they always ate alone.
Always ate alone. That sounds tough. And what were those 5 measures?
They measured community engagement, how involved people felt in their local community, trust, how much they trusted people they met, worthwhile life, feeling their life had purpose, and then overall happiness and life satisfaction.
And across all 5?
Across all 5, the difference was statistically significant. It wasn't just a tiny blip. Eating socially, even just sometimes, correlated with feeling more connected, more trusting, feeling your life was more worthwhile, and just being happier and more satisfied overall.
That's pretty compelling. Just not always eating alone seems to make a difference.
It really does.
Did they try to figure out what predicts how often someone eats socially? Like what factors are linked to doing it more?
Yes, they used a statistical method called multiple regression analysis to look at that. You can think of it as trying to sort through a bunch of different factors to see which ones have the strongest connection or predictive power for social eating frequency.
And what popped out as important?
3 things really stood out as significant predictors: having higher life satisfaction, being more engaged with your community, and crucially, having a larger support clique.
Ah, the support clique. Okay, let's really dig into that one. That sounds fundamental. How exactly did they define the support clique in this study?
It was defined as those really close friends and family members, the people you feel you can genuinely depend on for emotional support, social support, maybe even practical or financial help if you really needed it.
So your core safety net, the people you call when things get rough.
Exactly. Your inner circle.
That's obviously vital for resilience, for well-being. Did they find a typical size for this clique?
Yeah, the average number of people respondents felt they could count on was 4.63. Which is really interesting because it's very, very close to the number found in lots of previous studies, which typically puts that core support network at around 5 individuals.
So it confirms that general finding. Okay. And how often people ate socially relate to the size of this critical support group?
This, for me, was one of the most powerful findings in the whole study. The correlation was incredibly strong.
Stronger than the other factors.
Visually, when you look at the graph, it's striking. People who rarely or never ate socially had significantly fewer people in their support clique compared to those who ate socially more often.
How significant are we talking? Like 1 or 2 people fewer?
Much more than that. On average, it was quite profound. People who reported never eating socially, those who always ate alone, had an average support clique size of only about 2.5 people.
Wow, only 2 or 3 people they felt they could rely on.
Yeah, whereas those who ate socially very often had an average clique size of around 5.5 people.
So more than double.
Pretty much double the number of close, dependable supporters, yeah. It suggests that someone who always eats alone might have roughly half the core support network compared to someone who frequently shares meals.
That is a massive difference. And it feels like it points towards something more than just, people with more friends eat out more. It suggests the eating itself might be doing something.
Exactly. It hints that social eating isn't just a consequence of having friends. It might be an activity that actively helps you build and maintain those crucial supportive relationships. It's part of the servicing we mentioned.
Did the study try to explore that potential causal link? Does eating together lead to stronger networks, or is it just correlation?
They did try to get at that using a technique called path analysis. It's a bit technical, but basically it lets you look at a whole network of variables, social eating, clique size, happiness, trust, etc., and see how they might influence each other over time. It suggests possible pathways of cause and effect.
Okay. And what kind of story did the path analysis tell here?
It suggested a couple of key things. First, that eating social dinners seems to directly correlate with having a bigger support clique, as we saw. But it also seems to have a direct positive effect on your overall life satisfaction.
Ah, so eating together boosts life satisfaction directly.
That's what the model suggested. And then this increased life satisfaction sort of spills over. It positively influences other aspects of well-being, like happiness, trust in other people, and that feeling of life being worthwhile.
So it's not just that happy, connected people happen to eat together more often. It looks like the act of eating together might actually be a driver, contributing to becoming happier and better connected.
Exactly. The path analysis even showed what they call a bidirectional arrow between social eating frequency and the size of your support clique.
Meaning it goes both ways.
Yeah, it supports the idea that sharing meals helps you service and maintain those important relationships, making your support network stronger. And of course, having a larger, stronger network naturally gives you more opportunities and reasons to eat socially in the first place. It looks like a positive feedback loop.
Okay, that's fascinating. So the frequency really matters for well-being and network size. But what about the experience itself? Is it just being physically present while eating? Or does what actually happens during the meal make a difference to that feeling of connection?
That was the study's second major question. They specifically asked people about their last evening meal they shared with someone who didn't live with them.
Okay.
And they asked how much closer they felt to the other person or people after that meal. And they compared this feeling after an evening meal versus a midday meal.
Was there a difference between evening and midday?
Yes, a significant one. People reported feeling notably closer to their dining companions after an evening meal compared to a midday one shared with someone outside their household.
Evening meals pack more of a bonding punch, though. Interesting. Any theories why that might be the case?
Well, the sources offer a few ideas. One is just, common sense observation. A lot of our most important social stuff tends to happen in the evening, doesn't it? After work, when people are maybe more relaxed, have more unstructured time, winding down.
True, the pressure's off a bit.
There's also a really fascinating potential evolutionary angle that Dunbar talks about, linking it to the development of firelight.
Firelight.
How does that connect?
The theory is that being able to control fire, and therefore have light after dark, might have been a really crucial turning point in human social evolution. Shifting significant social time to the evening hours could have been key.
Why would that be so important?
Because it potentially freed up more of the vital daylight hours for essential things like foraging or hunting.
Yeah.
You need daylight to find food effectively.
So if you could condense a lot of your social bonding activities, the chatting, the storytelling, the relationship maintenance into the evening hours around the fire, it might have allowed early human groups to become larger and more cohesive because they had enough time during the day to feed everyone and dedicated time in the evening to strengthen the social ties needed to keep that larger group working together.
Wow, that's incredible. The simple act of gathering around a fire after dark might have fundamentally reshaped human society.
It's a compelling idea, and research on modern hunter-gatherer groups like the Sand People seems to support this idea that evening conversation is just different.
How so?
Daytime talk tends to be more functional, more factual, discussing tasks, where resources are, making plans. Evening conversations, especially around the campfire, tend to be much more social, sharing stories, talking about the day's events, laughing, maybe singing. More about connection than coordination.
Which suggests a deep, maybe even evolutionary reason why evenings might be particularly potent for social bonding through those shared experiences and conversations.
Exactly. And this leads right into the next finding from the UK survey. What specific activities during the evening meal actually boosted that feeling of closeness?
Okay, so what made the biggest difference?
They looked at several things. The analysis showed that the number of people dining together, the average was about 3.6. The amount of laughter, sharing reminiscences, telling old stories or talking about shared memories, and also whether alcohol was consumed, all had significant positive effects on feeling closer afterwards.
Laughter and reminiscences.
Yeah, that really rings true, doesn't it? Sharing a good laugh or walking down memory lane together just feels inherently bonding.
Absolutely. And the data strongly backed up that intuition. Laughter and reminiscences actually showed the biggest effects. They had a more powerful impact on increasing that feeling of closeness than just the number of people there, or even drinking alcohol.
What about telling jokes? Since that often leads to laughter.
Interestingly, no. While laughter itself was highly significant, just the frequency of telling jokes alone wasn't statistically significant in predicting closeness. So it's not necessarily the attempted humor.
It seems it's more about the spontaneous act of shared laughter itself, whatever the trigger might be, a funny story, a silly situation, whatever. That shared positive emotion seems to be the powerful ingredient for bonding.
And what about just enjoying the food itself? Did eating something nice like dessert make a difference? I saw chocolate was mentioned as a control.
Yeah, they did ask if chocolate was eaten during the meal, kind of as a control for just the pleasure of eating something enjoyable. No detectable effect. Eating chocolate didn't make people feel significantly closer to their dining companions.
Okay, so that adds more weight to the idea that it's not just the food or the
Yeah.
pleasure of eating.
Exactly. It seems to be much more about the social interaction and the activities happening around the table, the laughter, the stories, the shared experience that really drives that bonding effect.
And this all seems to circle back to the endorphin system you mentioned earlier, right?
Yeah.
The sources connect laughter and alcohol to endorphin release.
They do. Both are known triggers for endorphins, these neurochemicals that are understood to be really fundamental for social bonding, not just in humans, but in other primates too.
And eating itself has some endorphin connection.
Eating behavior is also associated with some level of endorphin activation, yes.
So the idea, the speculation really, is that the strong bonding effect of these social meals, especially the evening ones filled with laughter and stories, might be partly happening because they're triggering this endorphin release.
That's the hypothesis. The study couldn't definitively prove that biochemical mechanism, of course, but it's a very plausible explanation for why these activities feel so good and create such strong bonds. Maybe the endorphins come directly from the laughter and storytelling. Maybe from certain food ingredients, the source mentions chili as another potential trigger. Or maybe it's simply that the meal provides the extended time and relaxed context for these endorphin-releasing activities to happen naturally.
It's likely a mix of all those things, isn't it?
Probably. A complex interplay creating that positive feeling and strengthening the social connection.
Okay, let's shift focus slightly. We've talked about general social eating, but one of the sources, the Homestead piece, really zeroes in on the power of family meals specifically. It seems like a unique and really important context.
Oh, absolutely. It's highlighted as just profoundly effective for strengthening family bonds and, maybe crucially, improving communication within the family unit.
How does it help communication so much?
Well, think about it. In our incredibly busy lives, the dinner table can become one of the few reliable, dedicated times and spaces where everyone is actually together without the immediate pressure of work, homework, phones, or other distractions, hopefully.
Right, it creates this natural pause in the day.
Exactly. A less forced environment for conversation to just happen. It's where family members can organically share little details about their day, talk about things they're struggling with, celebrate small successes, just connect as people outside of, scheduled activities or getting chores done.
And that regular interaction builds trust, presumably.
Immensely. Parents get a chance to model their values, talk about expectations, but maybe more importantly, they get to listen. They gain this invaluable insight into what's actually going on in their kids' lives.
Which can help them spot problems early.
Definitely. The source explicitly says research shows kids who eat regularly with their families tend to have better relationships with their parents and feel more supported overall. And that insight parents gain can be crucial for picking up on potential issues early, whether it's struggles at school, social anxieties, anything really.
And the benefits for the kids themselves go beyond just the relationship with parents, don't they?
Yeah.
I think the Food and Wine source mentioned other positive outcomes.
Yes, it cited other studies linking regular family meals to all sorts of good things, better dietary habits. Kids are more likely to eat fruits and veggies, apparently lower rates of childhood obesity and eating disorders, and even better academic performance.
Wow, it really seems like this one simple practice has incredibly wide-ranging positive effects.
It really does seem to punch above its weight. And the type of meal can add another layer, too. Home-cooked meals, specifically.
How so? Beyond just being maybe healthier.
Well, the process of actually preparing the food together offers brilliant opportunities for teamwork. Everyone can chip in depending on their age and ability. Little kids can set the table or wash vegetables. Older kids can help chop or learn a specific recipe.
And learning those family recipes.
Yeah.
That's about more than just cooking, isn't it?
Oh, hugely. Passing down how to make grandma's soup or that special holiday bread. It's about sharing cultural heritage, connecting generations. It reinforces a sense of family identity, of roots. The meal becomes this tangible link to history and tradition.
It sounds wonderful, but let's be realistic. For so many families, just getting everyone in the same place at the same time feels almost impossible some days.
Absolutely. We have to acknowledge that reality. Modern life is hectic. You've got conflicting work schedules, school activities, sports, music lessons, plus the constant pull of technology is a genuine challenge.
So how do people overcome that? Did the sources offer practical tips?
Yes, the Homestead source had some good, practical strategies. The first one is basically just making it a priority. Deciding that shared meals, even if it's only, say, 3 or 4 times a week, are important enough to schedule in like any other non-negotiable appointment.
So, conscious effort and planning.
Planning ahead is definitely key. Things like prepping some ingredients over the weekend or using a slow cooker so dinner is ready when people get home can make a massive difference to the stress levels on busy weeknights.
Makes sense. And what about the atmosphere at the table? That seems important too.
Crucial. Creating a positive, welcoming vibe. And a big part of that is making a conscious effort to minimize distractions. Turn off the TV, put phones and tablets away, or at least on silent and out of sight. The focus needs to be on the people and the conversation.
Not always easy.
Not always easy, no, but really important for making it quality time. And related to that is keeping the conversation itself generally supportive and positive. Meaning, try to avoid using mealtime as the primary time for dealing with conflict, handing out discipline, or bringing up major grievances. Obviously, sometimes things need to be discussed, but the default should be more about sharing enjoyable stories, talking about fun things coming up, discussing interesting stuff you learned. The goal is to make the dinner table a place of relaxation and connection, not stress and tension.
That makes a lot of sense. Create a space people want to be in.
Exactly.
Now, another source, the Foundry piece, brought in a slightly different angle, mindful eating. How does that fit into shared meals?
It's an interesting connection. Mindful eating in general is about being fully present with your food, right? Paying attention to the taste, the texture, the smell, noticing your body's signals of hunger and fullness, and really importantly, eating without distraction.
Okay, so how does that apply when you're eating with other people?
The source argues that you can extend that mindfulness. Being present during a shared meal isn't just about being present with the food on your plate. It's fundamentally about being present with the people sharing that meal with you.
So putting away the phone isn't just about avoiding distraction from your food. It's about avoiding distraction from your companions.
Precisely. It enhances your enjoyment of the food, sure, but it also deepens the connection with the people you're with. It's about fully immersing yourself in the whole experience, the nourishment, the company, the conversation all at once.
That's a nice way to think about it.
Yeah. And the source is realistic. It acknowledges that you're probably not going to be strictly mindful during every single meal and think big holiday dinners or parties. The dynamic is different. But aiming for more mindfulness during those regular social meals, especially with family or close friends, could really enhance the quality of the interaction and the bonding that happens.
Right. Okay, let's zoom out again to the bigger picture. Shared meals aren't just personal or about family. They're deeply cultural too, aren't they?
Hugely so. As the Hubble source points out, food is way more than just fuel for survival. It carries this undeniable social, cultural, even religious significance in pretty much every human society we know of.
Can you give some examples?
Well, think about the central role of shared food and drink in religious ceremonies like the Christian Eucharist, with the bread and wine symbolizing communion and connection, or something like the Icelandic Thorrablot festival, where sharing traditional, maybe even challenging foods is a way of celebrating cultural heritage together.
And food carries personal meaning too, right? Like
Yeah.
the chocolate example, triggering childhood memories.
Exactly. And geographic meaning. You say authentic pizza, and immediately your mind goes to Italy. Food connects us to place, to identity.
And the whole culture around restaurants, cafes, pubs, that reflects this social function too.
Absolutely. These places aren't just functional depots for calories. They are designed, structured as social hubs, places specifically created for people to meet up, connect, build relationships, celebrate, all centered around the act of sharing food and drink outside the home.
And the cultural rules around eating together. That Reddit discussion you mentioned gave a fascinating glimpse into that, didn't it?
Yeah.
All the different etiquette points.
Oh, that discussion was brilliant, really revealing about how specific and deeply embedded these cultural norms can be and how much they vary.
What were some of the examples that stood out?
Well, there was the whole thing about eating fish in China, the etiquette around not flipping the fish over, but pulling the meat off the top, then removing the spine to get to the bottom half, apparently linked to old superstitions about fishermen not wanting to capsize their boats.
Wow. Okay.
Then there was the very lively debate about tipping in Italy. Lots of different opinions, even among Italians. Some saying it's unnecessary, maybe even a bit insulting, implying the staff need charity, while others said it's becoming more expected with tourism. And the whole separate concept of the coperto, the cover charge.
Right, it's complex.
Vary. And other Italian norms, like when you drink coffee, generally after the meal, not during it, or who pays when you invite someone, the person who invited pays.
What about using bread? That came up too.
Yeah, the etiquette around using bread to push food onto your fork, or more specifically, doing the faire la scarpetta, using bread to mop up the sauce left on your plate.
Is that okay or not?
The general consensus seemed to be, it depends, probably fine in very informal settings or at home, but maybe considered impolite or low class in more formal restaurants. Again, nuanced.
Even elbows on the table wasn't straightforward.
Right. Everyone learns the rule, no elbows on the table. But the discussion pointed out that in reality, it's often ignored, or maybe only really applies to fully leaning your weight on your elbows while eating, not just resting them briefly.
So what does all this variation and discussion about etiquette tell us?
It really underscores how profoundly culture shapes the whole experience of eating together. These aren't just random rules, they're often tied to history, social class, beliefs about hospitality and respect. They add all these layers of meaning and expectation to the simple act of sharing food. And the fact that they're debated even within a culture shows they're living, evolving things.
Okay, so bringing all these different threads together now, the history, the science, the family aspect, the cultural layers, what's the big takeaway? What's the real payoff for making shared meals a priority?
The core message, and it comes through really clearly and consistently across all these different sources, is powerful. Regularly eating with other people is a significant, reliable pathway to greater happiness and overall well-being.
And that's backed up by big studies, like the World Happiness Report.
Yes, that report confirms this finding on a global scale. It's not just a Western thing, it seems pretty universal.
And a flip side is just as important to remember.
Absolutely. Consistent solo dining and the social isolation that often comes with it is genuinely detrimental. Bad for your mental well-being and, as we discussed, bad for your physical health too, with impacts potentially comparable to heavy smoking.
But the good news, the really encouraging part, is that it doesn't take a massive life overhaul to make a difference. Yeah, right?
Not at all. That's one of the most hopeful findings. The Food and Wine article highlighted research suggesting that simply adding one extra shared meal per week, just one, is associated with a measurable, meaningful increase in happiness ratings.
How meaningful?
They described the effect as being equivalent to moving something like 5 places up in the global happiness rankings, which is a pretty significant shift for what feels like a relatively small change in behavior.
Just one extra meal a week could give you that kind of boost. That makes it feel incredibly achievable for most people, doesn't it? Even with busy lives.
It really does. And remember that path analysis from the Dunbar study. It supports the idea that this isn't just a coincidence. Social eating seems to actively foster relationships, it builds and maintains that vital support network, and it directly contributes to increased life satisfaction and trust. It creates this positive upward spiral.
And we shouldn't forget how those meals become so powerful. The engagement piece.
Exactly. The sources really emphasize that conversation and genuine engagement are key. Humorous chat, laughter, sharing stories, reminiscing, these are the things that really amplify the positive bonding effects of sharing food.
While the opposite, being distracted by phones or the TV, can really dilute those benefits or even cancel them out.
Right. Being truly present with the people you're sharing the table with seems absolutely paramount to getting the most out of it.
Okay. So we've taken a pretty deep dive today into why sharing a meal is so much more than just, getting calories in.
Yeah, it really is a fundamental human activity, isn't it? Its roots go way back to ancient feasting, it's woven deeply into the cultural fabric everywhere, and it profoundly impacts our closest family ties. We've seen really compelling evidence from big surveys linking regular social eating to having larger support networks.
To greater happiness, more life satisfaction, feeling more engaged with your community, being more trusting.
We learned about that unique power of evening meals for bonding. Maybe connected to that ancient shift to using firelight for social time after dark. And how specific things like laughter and sharing stories seem especially potent, possibly because they tap into our basic endorphin-driven bonding systems.
We explored the huge range of benefits that come from family meals, in particular. Better communication, trust, helping kids develop well, passing on culture and skills.
And we saw how even things like practicing a bit of mindfulness, just being present and navigating all those cultural nuances around food etiquette, further shape and enrich this vital way of connecting with each other.
So the picture that emerges from all these sources seems really clear, doesn't it?
It does. It suggests that making shared meals a priority, making an effort to have positive, engaging conversations during them, and consciously choosing to be fully present with the people you're with. These aren't just nice little extras. They're actually powerful investments in your own well-being and in the strength of your relationships.
It's not about perfection, is it? Not about gourmet food or flawless etiquette.
No, the research points more towards consistency, genuine connection, and meaningful conversation being the keys. Showing up, engaging, sharing that time.
Okay, so here's a final thought, something for you, the listener, to mull over. In this world we live in, which feels increasingly fast-paced, dominated by screens, where eating alone or distracted is becoming so common, is the simple, intentional act of gathering around a table with other people becoming, in a way, less of a routine and maybe more of a quiet but powerful act of resistance, a revolutionary choice for connection.
That's an interesting way to put it. If all this evidence tells us that sharing meals is this impactful for our happiness, our health, our sense of belonging and support, what might you actually be gaining when you consciously make space for it?
And perhaps, what might you be unintentionally losing when you don't? Maybe just consider. What's one small step you could take this week, maybe aiming for just one extra shared meal with someone to potentially start unlocking some of that power in your own life?
It really might be one of the simplest paths available to leading a richer, more connected life.